Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tanchaz Talk, the world's only English language program focusing primarily on Hungarian folk music. I am Kalman Magyar Öcsi, speaking to you from the southern studio in Naples, Florida. That's right, down in Naples, teaching a course this month of August 2021. But Tanchaz Talk never sleeps. Episodes of Tanchaz Talk, which combine a mix of music and stories delivered by yours truly, are available as always on tanchaz.com, that's tanchaz.com, or on YouTube. Just search Tanchaz Talk and subscribe so you don't miss anything. Now today we have an episode of Tanchaz Talk interviews. This is where I delve into long form interviews with a wide array of guests. Episodes of Tanchaz Talk are available on all popular podcast platforms, including Apple, Google, and Spotify podcast stores. Make sure you subscribe and leave a nice review if you like what you hear. Today, I'm excited to welcome as my guest Sylvie Paquette-Fritsch. Let me tell you about Sylvie. She was born in 1980 in Montreal. Hey, I remember that year, barely. She grew up in the Hungarian community in Montreal. That means Hungarian school, scouts, and of course, folk dance. She danced with the Bokréta folk dance group there. Sylvie also participated in some vocal training and choirs and singing and the like, which is where she gets her vocal chops from. After she finished high school in Montreal, she wanted to study seamanship. Now, for you kids listening to this, the spelling of that is Seaman. Don't forget that first A in there. That's seamanship. So Sylvie moved down to Florida. How appropriate. That's where I am right now. She moved down here for a year and took a course in seamanship after she discovered, though after finishing that long course, about a year I think, she didn't want to spend the rest of her life at sea, so she moved back home to Montreal. Sylvie had always grown up loving agriculture and horses, pretty much the extreme opposite of being at sea, I'd say. And she enrolled in a horse trainer course in California for 3 months. And while there, she connected with someone from Australia who had invited her to come for a visit. So Sylvie decided to visit her newfound Australian friend and his family. But as it turns out, her friend left again for California. So there was no one to actually visit. But Sylvie took a real liking to Australia, and why wouldn't she? She was supposed to go for 3 months. She ended up staying for almost a year, completing an apprenticeship in the meantime. Sylvie soon returned to Australia for good for 3 years to attend the University of New England in Armidale, Australia. She graduated with a Bachelor of Agriculture in 2006. And by the way, later on, she'd also earned an equine business management certificate from the University of Guelph in Ontario. On her return from Australia to Montreal in 2006, Sylvie rejoined the Montreal Hungarian community, and then her and her bestie friend Jessica Paulus hatched up an idea to form a band. The band came to be called Gyanta, which you've heard about before on this program many times, since I am now a part of that band. So in 2006, 2007, Gyanta was hatched and born. Up to the present day, Sylvie remains one of the band's singers, and she also learned to play the ütőgardon, or the unique percussive cello instrument found only in the Carpathian Mountains of Transylvania. Armed with her Bachelor of Agriculture degree, Sylvie was looking to buy some farming land, which she finally did in 2007. Not finally, it happened pretty fast. In 2007, she moved to Alexandria, Ontario, which is a rural community situated pretty much right between Montreal and Ottawa, just on the Ontario side of the Quebec-Ontario border. In Alexandria, Sylvie started working in the agricultural industry, moving more and more into the local Alexandria food and farming scene. She worked as a coordinator for the East Ontario Agri-Food Network from 2014 to 2016. And she was also on the planning committee of the Eastern Ontario Garlic Festival. That sounds good. A few years ago, she started working for a company called Mixed Tiles, an Israeli startup at the time, which sells very creative photograph solutions. And just a few months ago, she joined a new startup called Ashby, where she works in quality assurance. Ashby specializes in recruiting software and job applicant training or tracking. So Sylvie really runs the gamut in terms of her experience, from old school professions like farming and seamanship to cutting edge IT work. Soon after, on the personal side, soon after moving to Alexandria, Sylvie met a jovial Alexandria native by the name of Michel or Mike Paquette. They were married in 2009 right there on the farm in Alexandria, which Sylvie's farm, which goes by the name of Sonrisa Farms. They've since had 3 beautiful children, Emöke Zenge, who happens to be my goddaughter, and also Sobi. Sylvie remains very involved in the Montreal Hungarian community, teaching the little youngsters folk dance, and together with our good friend Bori Köntés, she is helping revitalize the Hungarian folk dance community in Ottawa as well. Sylvie is a terrific dancer, singer, musician, mother, wife, farmer, businesswoman, and so much more. One of the beating hearts of the Ontario, Quebec Hungarian folklore scene. Please welcome Sylvie Paquette-Fritsch, calling in from Alexandria, Ontario. Hi, Sylvie.
Hi, good morning, Öcsi.
Good morning, and welcome back to Florida indirectly here.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure, and you know, I've known you for many years, but I always enjoy these discussions with people that I know, because it allows us to kind of pry into to areas we otherwise wouldn't, and it makes me do a little more research on you, and I've learned so much about you, and I think even those who might know you and be listening, I didn't know that, so it's really nice to connect in this way. Sylvia, there's a fair bit of in your background about traveling, Florida, California, Australia, and living that life a bit. And I know you've also traveled throughout Hungary and Transylvania and the like. What have you learned through all your travels about life in general? What can you share on that?
Oof, well, that could probably take the whole time, but I've definitely learned a lot. Most of my travel was done in my younger years. I would like to get a little bit back more into it now. But, you talked a little bit about my trip and how I ended up in Australia. And honestly, I'll never forget that feeling, because I didn't really know what I was going to do when I got there. I had some ideas, but I didn't really know. And it was funny because a lot of people were telling me before I left, "Oh, you're brave. And I was like, "What do you mean brave? This is going to be so exciting." And I didn't see it at all. Until the day before I was actually ready to leave, and then I started to really panic. And
right.
then I was like, oh boy. And then I realized actually how much guts it did take me to actually put myself onto that plane. And I did. And then when I arrived with, my luggage, and I got out of the airport, and I was in Sydney on the other side of the world, and I was, that feeling I think will stay with me forever, of having done something that was really scary and was really far, and I was all by myself. So, I think that was a big one, just to be brave, to do things on your own, and that's how you learn to be even braver later on. You sort of get some practice by doing stuff. And of course, just, go with the flow. That's a big one. And just how much we have in common with other people around the world, and how you can, create relationships and make friendships, with people who live in a really different way than you. So those were really important lessons for me.
Sylvie, did you consider staying in Australia?
I mean, absolutely. I fit in there so well. When I went there, I have a very close, tight group of friends that we've grown up with together, like you mentioned, the Hungarian community. And, it's unusual to have childhood friends be still your everyday friends when you're in your 40s. It's not the usual situation. And so I'd never expected to get those sort of friendships by living in Australia. I thought I'd really miss everybody, which I did, but I ended up building lifelong friendships there too. And I still miss people from Australia every day. A bunch of them came to my wedding. We're still very, very close and very much in each other's lives. So I certainly did. And it was a difficult decision whether to stay or whether to come home. But in the end, my community, my family were the winners there, and I decided to come home.
How dissimilar or similar is life in Australia? I mean, I know it might not be a representative time because, you're in your 20s, mid-20s, so no family and the like, but what are some of the big differences? And I know one of our good friends, co-founder of Gyanta, Bondi Kochish, is down there still for several years now.
Yes.
I know he likes living there, but what are some of the takeaways in terms of life there versus in Montreal and Alexandria?
Well, I would say there's a lot of similarities. Australians and Canadians get along super, super well. I'll give you an example. I lived for a time in a very remote, so one of the most remote towns in Australia, like right in the middle. It takes, it's about like 200 kilometers of dirt road, and I'm being generous when I say dirt road to get there. Like, it's basically, wow, you can barely tell the road from the desert that you're getting on to get there, or you take like the mail plane to get there. The place is called Birdsville, but it is a tourist attraction, so people go there. It's like the gateway to the desert, the Simpson Desert in Australia. So we would get a lot of tourists from all over the place, and if it was Australian tourists, the first question they'd ask me was, "Are you American or are you Canadian?" And I'm sorry to say, but they would be like a big sigh of relief when they found out that I was Canadian. So we get a really, really sort of animosity a lot of the times with Americans, and a real camaraderie with Canadians. At least, keep in mind this was 20 years ago, but that's really, really how it was. So Canadians and Australians get along super, super well. I think it might be a Commonwealth thing.
Right, and so the vibe that's there, I mean, it's not that different than living in Canada?
It is. I would say it's there are cultural, differences. Just the lifestyle, I think, living in a city like Montreal. I never really lived in Montreal, but like comparing Sydney to Montreal, say it feels a little bit slower in Australia. People aren't quite as much of in a rush as they seem to be here all the time.
Right.
But I also spent a lot of time in very rural Australia, so that's a different story again. City to the country.
I don't know if you hear the buzz in the background. A very Florida thing is happening right now. The landscapers are out, Sylvie.
Oh, no, I can't hear it.
Yes, so there's like this, the zzz is going on, and that reminds me to ask you. Folk songs are often about the land, agriculture, even horses. Is living on the farm like you do, does that help you connect with the songs? And then put another way, are you ever out there doing your farming work and you say, yeah, I get that song now, whatever, or does it bring you closer to what the life of the people who created these songs hundreds of years ago in these remote villages of Transylvania and Hungary might have been thinking?
Absolutely. And in particular, my time in Australia, because, here where I live, it is farming land, but I wouldn't call it like very remote and really sort of super, super agricultural. But the places that I lived in Australia were, you're so far from your neighbors and you're, completely remote. Absolutely. I can't tell you how many times I would be, riding a horse or dealing with a situation and a song would come into my mind, absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah. We I mean, some of the great revival musicians and singers, live in condos in Budapest, and or in apartment buildings, in the outskirts, but that connection that you have every day with the land, is it must be a powerful thing, because I know when I was in Transylvania, and I just saw the shepherd sitting there looking over the flock, and I'm like, I get it. I get the song. I get where it's from, and I think that's,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that real sort of codependence between, like, not just the land, but, your animals and everything, and how they're really, you're depending on each other so much. It's really interesting.
Yeah, interesting. Sylvie, take me back to 2006, 2007. You and Jessica Paulus, who many listeners will know, also a member of Gyanta, and you grew up together side by side with her, and you're still very, very good friends. How did the idea of Gyanta forming that group come about, and how was that hatched?
Well, Jessie and I had just returned from Australia, and I was really fortunate to pick up a job working with her at her mom's veterinary clinic at the time. And so we worked a lot together and spent a lot of time together, sort of the way we usually cook up our next adventure, fantasizing about the things that we would like to do and things that we want to bring to life. And, I'm trying to remember, you brought this up yesterday. I was like, how did the conversations really come up? I think it was just, we were getting so much more, back into different music things, and festivals were happening, and people were playing instruments, and Levi was playing, and Bondi was playing, and Shogi was playing, Gala Andras, and then we had met Margit in Toronto and Attila, and we thought, wouldn't it be amazing if we could do, and of course we had Életva as an inspiration for us, growing up. So, but we saw you guys down there. And I think that's sort of how we cooked it up. We said, Montreal and Toronto are not that far apart. We could figure out ways to, get together and practice and blah, blah, blah. Of course, virtual stuff wasn't really a thing then.
Right.
But we did I think we did a couple of times where we'd meet in Kingston and practice for a show or something that was coming up. But yeah, that's kind of how it started. And when we brought it up with everybody was into the idea, and off we went.
Gyanta's been going for 14, almost 15 years now, but then the pandemic hit last year. What has that meant in your life, in terms of the inability to get out, perform, go to festivals, go to Tanchazes, and do the music?
Yeah, it's been really tough. I have to say it's definitely been one of the hardest things about the pandemic. It's always been very obvious what a huge role this sort of Hungarian folk scene has in my mental health and my well-being spiritually. And so to be completely removed from it for a year and a half has been really painful, and especially, big, Chitka Tabor and Pontozo and all these big events that are, the funny thing is that, as Gyanta, with you guys living in Toronto, me in Alexandria, the rest of the gang in Montreal, it's not like we played with each other, played, music together every week or anything. So in that way, our sort of gigs together, our times together were well thought out in advance, and gave us time to look forward to them as well, and have something to plan and be together. And yeah, it was a really, really challenging. And then there's of course completely losing track of the Utuagardon between all five of us.
Yeah, there was the case of missing Utuagardon.
The mystery of where the Utuagardon ended up.
Yeah. It was in Jessica's closet, no?
Yeah, I think it was in her basement.
Yeah.
We do, nobody panic. We do have the Utuagardon. Everything is safe and sound.
Right.
It's just funny finding it.
Well, that brings up some of the exciting news about the return of Gyanta in the public forum, which is going to be a few weeks from now. The herd immunity tour, which can be spelled two ways, HERD, but also HEARD.
Yes,
why don't you,
we love a good play on words.
We do. Why don't you tell everyone where we'll be and what's going on, so if people listen to this podcast, can check these events out.
Absolutely. Hopefully that by the time people are listening to this, it'll be all over social media. They have already a little bit of background to it, but we'll be in Toronto is it the Drum Taverna? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, Drum Taverna, yeah.
I'm saying it properly. Yeah, Drum Taverna, and that's on Thursday, September 9th. So we're going to be out on the patio there having a great time, great vibes. Friday evening is going to be in Ottawa at the Hungarian House at the Magyar Ház. There's going to be some food there as well for sale by the Hungarian House. And then on Saturday, we're going to be at La Petite Marche in Montreal in the afternoon, Saturday afternoon, 2 to 5. It'll be a beautiful concert outside.
Sylvie, I think this is the first time that Gyanta has, at least since I joined the group in 2008, has actually played in Ottawa, at the Hungarian House, or anywhere in Ottawa. I don't remember playing in Ottawa.
Yeah, you know what? I think you're right. That didn't even occur to me. I think we did do something. I feel like we were there one time with Margit, possibly.
Yeah.
But you're right. Yeah, you're right.
Well, what's going on in Ottawa? Tell me about the Hungarian community there. I know at one point it was. I mean, they still have the club, and I performed there in the past, many moons ago. But what happened? What's the kind of life cycle of that happened there in the last few decades, and what's going on now?
Well, I'm not, fully in the insides stream on what's happening in Ottawa. My participation has mostly been in Montreal, even though despite living sort of halfway between, I tend to go when there are events and these kind of things. But the Cserkészet and the Magyar Iskola are going very strong. They have an amazing program going there. We often do things together with the Montreali Hungarian School, and the Cserkészek also get together and do stuff together. So that's very strong. The dance group, I feel like, has been sort of off and on. I don't think they've had an adult dance group in a very long time.
Yeah.
But the children have sort of gone through a bit of a cyclical situation there. They had a big infusion of really good stuff with Dori, who was the Kacsépés, and she did some wonderful work with the dance group there. So we're hoping to sort of bring that back a little bit. It's difficult with having adult involvement to be able to teach the kids and that kind of stuff. So we're really, really excited. This sort of came up during the pandemic with Bori, and we're both excited to be able to get involved and build a stronger dance group there for the kids.
Do you sense that you're kind of in between Montreal and Ottawa, and your children as well? Are you going to kind of commit to one or the other? Because it's hard to be pulled in different directions, literally to the left or to the right. I'm sort of hopeful that we might be able to, at least for dance, that we might be able to do both. So I might be completely crazy with that idea, but I feel like we might be able to do it because as I'm committed for teaching for both, and it's not going to be on the same day no matter what. So for dance, my kids might end up in both dance groups. As far as Cserkészet and Magyar Iskola, we've committed to Montreal for now. Right. Well, it's a very vibrant place, and it's Montreal is, and I know Ottawa. Nations capitals don't tend to be a huge hotbed of Hungarian activity. Just a different vibe always. Same in Washington D.C. Especially in terms of youth. But everyone, I mean, down in Washington as well, they're doing a great job revitalizing that. Sheresh Zsuzsi and Kati and the like are working hard on that. So, well, best of luck to Ottawa, and I'm also excited to be back there in a couple of weeks to play with you and perform again together. And I know one of the last latest episodes of Tanchaz Talk, I played some bootleg recording from the party that we were at a couple of months ago, the house party in Toronto. So
nice.
That was our kind of get back together, and that was such a great feeling to play again after a year and a half of not.
Gosh, yeah.
I want to shift a bit and talk about people that know you to be a very upbeat and very positive person. But as in, with many lives, there's a fair bit of tragedy as well, and you've been personally impacted by I would say two very, very, catastrophic tragedies in your life. And I first I want to talk about your husband Mike's accident that happened I think in 2011. Why don't you tell us about that and the impact that's had on you and your family?
Yeah, it was that was definitely huge. It was interestingly the day after we got home from Gyanta, and Mike went back to work, and actually Pierre had also slept over. Pierre from the dance group in Montreal, and so I woke up. Mike woke up and went to work right, before anybody else did, and I woke up to the phone ringing. I still had a house phone back then, and the house phone, and went back downstairs, and it was my friend across the street who Mike was working with, his husband, calling me to say, there's been an accident. Mike fell off the roof. So far it seems like he broke his leg or something, and it was just all sort of a blur. And anyways, long story short, it was a big fall. He fell, I think it was from about 40 feet, so the roof plus, because he was on a tower, and the tower fell along with him. And he ended up, very seriously sort of destroying his femur and breaking his ankle and both his wrists and a few vertebrae. Really, really, really a mess. It made quite a mess out of him. It was a miracle that he survived. It was a miracle that he didn't end up in a wheelchair. A lot of miracles. I think he had a bunch of angels saving him there. But it was big. It was a big. He required serious surgery. It required us to basically rearrange our house into sort of like a hospital room in order for him to be allowed to come home. They almost didn't let him come home to coalesce. It sort of depended on the situation at our house. His brother came and built a ramp so that the wheelchair could get into our house. And yeah, that was a few months before he could even sort of get upstairs to go to bed. And I want to say probably about a year-ish before he was able, a year and a half, I guess, before he could go back to work. Yeah, it was a big deal.
What was he doing up there? It was a satellite company, right? Disassembling a satellite.
Yeah, it's actually internet. So we have ExploreNet internet out here, and what it is, it's like a fixed wireless sort of thing. And a lot of people out here in the country, you need to have these towers that are attached to your house to be able to get above the trees so that you could connect with the tower. Mm-hmm. And so that's why he was up there, and they ended up finding out that the tower was sort of faulty, or there might have been a manufacturer's issue, or who knows. Anyways, it was a bunch of things came together for that to go wrong.
He was like even in a coma, right, for a while?
No, he wasn't. He actually didn't even lose consciousness during the accident. So he kind of protected his head with his wrists. So if you can, he kind of landed, and so he really messed up his one wrist, and the other wrist just got a small fracture, and he ended up with his head was fine. He got when your eye gets really bloodshot?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he had that, but that was it. So luckily he protected his melon.
Wow. The following year, another... Mike had the angels protecting him, but the following year, unfortunately, that didn't happen. Tell us about what happened the following year, around the same time, actually. But the following year.
You're right. It was very close to the same time. In July, the following year, we sadly lost my sister, which came as a big shock and a big, trauma to the whole family and to the community. We lost her to mental illness, sadly.
Yeah.
That was actually at Gyanta that we got the news from my mom and dad. So that was horrible. She was just a few weeks shy of her 30th birthday. Mm-hmm. So the sort of thing that you would never wish to happen to any family, to any parents, to any community.
Yeah. How do you find the strength to deal with that? To move forward. And I know you're a vociferous a reader of self-help books and podcasts and educational tools and the like. I don't know if that helped, but how do you find the strength to help Mike for that year?
I often look at this sort of phase in our lives where there was a lot of things that could have turned our lives really upside down, and I really was very lucky. My parents started their sort of personal development journey when I was in my teens, and I had a really turbulent relationship with my mom when I was a teenager. It was not good. It led to sort of me leaving the house very young. I was 16 when I left the house, and it was difficult. But at that time, my parents started sort of working on themselves, I guess is the way to put it. And it was really incredible to watch them grow and change, as adults, as my parents, and that had a really big impact on me when I was, sort of it was, 95-ish, 94-ish when they started. I was like 14, 15. And I really started to see the change in them. And, my mom and I were able to repair our relationship a lot and just a lot of different things. And I sort of told myself, okay, when I'm a bit older, I can see myself doing this stuff too. And I did. And I started to read some books and do some courses. And it was really awesome because when Mike and I met, he was really keen as well. I introduced him to some of these courses, and he came right on board, and we ended up doing a big series. It was like 3 years of a bunch of different courses and camps over those 3 years, which just finished pretty much, well, actually during, when Mike's accident happened, I ended up leaving for a camp, and he couldn't go. I almost didn't go because it was like in September or something after his accident. So it was right around then. And honestly, I can't tell you how many times I've looked at that phase in our lives and gone, you know what, we could not have had the tools to go through what we went through if we hadn't invested in ourselves, in our personal development, and learning, these tools and these techniques to handle these things, because it's certainly not taught in schools, definitely not taught in most families, and we just, it was life-changing for us, absolutely.
Can we delve into that a little more? What are the courses, the most meaningful? I know you've taken a few, but the most meaningful courses that you've taken and books you've read, and can you recommend them to us? And what are the big takeaways from some of them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. The company that we did a lot of most of our courses with, I'm not sure how much they're operating in North America anymore, but it was called Peak Potentials, and one of their sort of flagship camp is called Enlightened Warrior Training, and this training camp was really all about sort of finding your inner strength and your inner warrior, I guess, and you're just being able to, we talk a lot about mindset. And that's huge because we do have a lot of control over our mindset, and to be really transparent, I think there's a lot of sort of toxic personal development stuff out there, which is like, put on a smile even if you're not happy, and only positive vibes and all that kind of stuff. And I don't believe in that. I think, when something awful happens, it's something awful, and let's not try to spin it as something that's not awful. But it's being able to say, okay, this is really awful, but I do have the strength, and I will be able to get through this and come out on the other side of it.
So Peak Potentials is the course or that you participated in, or multiple like seminars or conferences or whatever?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we did like one that was called Enlightened Warrior Training, and then there's like one is like Wizard Training, where we talked about the warrior, but now let's talk about like that manifestation of what you want in your life and this kind of stuff. And it sounds super woo-woo when you're talking about it, but then when you're experiencing it and you're in it, you're really learning these lessons and living them and sort of implanting them into the way that you go about your days. So it changes the way you tackle life, I think.
I also know you took the Landmark Forum, which I did as well.
Yeah, I did.
How if at all has that helped you?
Yeah, it was an interesting experience because it was definitely different to Peak Potential, but a lot of the same sort of stuff. Whereas like you're coming up and you're looking at things from your past, from your childhood, and your programming and your messages that you've received growing up that you may not have even realized that you were getting, and you may not even realize the impact that they have on you. And so if you shed light on those and you bring them out, you're like, oh, that's why I do that now, or that's why I think that, and I don't need to hold on to that if that's not serving me. I think it was, I love Landmark too.
What about books? What are your most memorable books that you would recommend? In terms of in that self-help genre.
Yeah, I mean, well, so these like Warrior Camp, the Enlightened Warrior Camp, and these kind of stuff from Peak Potentials, those were created by a guy called Harv Eker, and so he has his book, which is called The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, which I really loved, which is just a mindset kind of thing, and looking at the way that you look at things. And okay, it's centered about money, but those kind of lessons can go across to other things, because the idea is that you have these preconceived notions that are blocking you from things today, or these programmings and stuff from your childhood. So that one I really like. And it's been actually a really long time since I've read anything, so nothing else comes to mind.
Secrets of the Millionaire Mind is funny that it's not about millionaire or making a million, being a millionaire financially at all, really. Just like Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week is not about working for 4 hours. These catchy titles are sometimes misleading.
Absolutely. But I love that book, by the way. You're the one who gave me the PDF the first time, the 4-Hour Work Week.
Yeah, that was the life-changing book that I read 10 years ago. So and can I just delve into the difficult relationship that you had, particularly with your mother when you were a teenager? I know that's been obviously repaired, but now as a mom, what lessons might have you learned, being in the role of the child in that relationship, that you might do some things differently when you're on the mom end in a few years?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, my mom had a difficult upbringing as well. She was kind of put into a mother role in her family, and things weren't easy for her either. So I can see that a lot, that sort of came into our relationship very much. But I definitely, one of the things that I didn't feel like as a teenager was I didn't feel that my mom was that interested in my life and what was important to me. Like for instance, Nappy stuff or my friends and that kind of stuff. And so I lacked that a bit. And my grandmother, on the other hand, my paternal grandmother, who was, you might even remember, she was very supportive. My grandparents were the ones who took me to dance and took me to Cserkészet and took me to Magyar Iskola and all that kind of stuff. And my grandmother was the one who would like call me every single day in Australia, and she literally learned how to use a computer, who had never turned on a computer in her life. In her 70s, learned how to send email from Chasa Norby, by the way, who was working for her. He set her up with all this stuff. He was an adopted grandson to my grandmother. But she was always interested in my life, and what's Jessica doing, and what's Juji doing, and what are you guys doing, and who's kissing who, and but that made us have a connection, feeling like someone's interested in your life, and I think that sort of comes probably naturally to me because I'm pretty nosy and I have a lot of FOMO, so I'm always wanting to know what's going on.
Yes.
So I don't think I might end up being a little bit more like my grandmother with my daughter, so we'll see.
Interesting. So that's this potentially the secret, like take interest in your children and what they're doing. Although interesting that you're calling out for that from your parents, but at the same time, a lot of teenagers don't want to really involve their parents, or maybe they just say that. Maybe they're just saying that.
That's what I think. They're just saying that typically, sort of from what I've read or anything about this kind of phase. It's like, keep talking to your teenagers even if they seem like they don't want to. And I think my mom really can take that stuff a little bit too personally. She's like, well, you don't want to talk to me, so I won't talk to you, so I think it might be a bit important to just not take that personally and assume that they do want you to talk to them even if they're acting like they don't.
Right. Good advice.
We'll see. My kids are still young, so.
Yes. Speaking of your kids, your husband Mike, he's not Hungarian. He is he's an Alexandrian native. I presume at some point they're French Quebec background. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, in fact, Mike was actually born in Quebec. They lived in Quebec briefly. I think his was his mom from Quebec or a French town in Ontario. I can't remember now. But definitely the lines are very blurred around here in Eastern Ontario. So I think he was 6 months old when they moved from Quebec back to Ontario, and they've been there ever since. So he grew up in a primarily French household, but like he speaks perfectly English and French. Like you'd never be able to tell either way. I don't know how he's so gifted at that. But so they grew up very much. Yeah, there are five kids, and some of them ended up going to English school. Some of them went to French school, but they're all bilingual.
And I know he has his first kid from his first marriage. Your three children together, uber Hungarian names, Emőke, Zenge, and Szabolcs. And what are some of the challenges or difficulties you have, if any, in bringing the kids up in this mixed language environment, and maintaining their Hungarianness?
Well, I think the most important thing was just way before kids, pre-kids, is just that Mike, even though he's not Hungarian, he's always been like enamored with the culture and with the music, and he fell in love with it very early on. And he's just that type of personality where he makes himself at home wherever he is. But he really felt a close personal connection to all of you guys in the community and the music and the dance and all that stuff. So he's been very supportive from the start. He will always come with everything. We were dancing together before his accident, and we started doing some of Dobby Gubby's videos together, and he'll always dance with me at Csipke and that kind of stuff. So I think that's huge, is just having somebody who's really on board with it. And he's on and off tried to learn Hungarian, and he's got his Duolingo every now and then. But he was always very supportive from the start. So when he knew that for me, the Hungarian community and the Hungarian language and all that kind of stuff is very important. And so he was very supportive of that from the start. And I feel very confident that if, God forbid, anything ever happened to me, he would still take the kids to Hungarian school.
Do you speak only Hungarian to the kids, more or less?
Yes, so that's kind of how we've done it. Is that I only speak Hungarian with the kids. I was sort of hoping Mike would take up the French baton, but he didn't really. I guess it's habits are hard to break as a family. We speak English, but it was very easy for us to send the kids to French school, and then they learn French there. But yes, I only speak Hungarian with the kids, so that's very important. I would say watching things in Hungarian for the kids, putting on Hungarian cartoons, all these kind of things those are really, really important. And having kids and having a connection to the community where you have friends that speak the language and who are interested in the culture and that kind of stuff. So all really important. And all that to say that as they get older, the harder it gets. And I've noticed that with the second and the third child, it's not that I'm speaking to them Hungarian any less, but it's that amongst themselves, they're not speaking to each other in Hungarian. And I don't have too much control over that.
Yeah.
So I'm still navigating that part. I try to do some like bribes where I'll be like, okay, if I hear you guys just only speaking to each other in Hungarian for the next hour, we'll go for ice cream or something. So I'm trying to be creative and come up with different ways. But I think the secret is really making sure that they can see the value in it, and that they have a good reason to speak it. So having friends that speak Hungarian or Czech, where they're encouraging the language to be spoken between themselves is huge.
There's always the fallback, which is the immersion of sending them to Hungary and not be surrounded by English speakers. That's the key. And even 3-4 weeks over there is a humongous help.
100%. See, I never did that as a child. We didn't really have any like that close family or anything that my parents were, I guess, that motivated to send me. I only started going to Hungary more regularly on my own. Like we went a couple of times to visit But oftentimes, some of my friends would like go for the summer or that kind of stuff. That didn't happen in my family.
So speaking of that, Sylvie, learning this Hungarian folk dance and folk music, and you're a real connoisseur of it, coming up as a dancer. But for instance, I had the benefit of being able to go to camps in Hungary, mostly Asperény, where I would say I honed my trade. But we also learned from people coming here at the various camps and the like.
Yeah.
Where who are some of your early teachers here, and how did you learn all these various dances? I mean, might be a silly question, but you didn't spend 4 or 5 summers over there as a teenager. A lot of people
No, that's
did.
true.
So
Yeah.
So what's the
I learned here. I learned from the dance group. I learned from the Suche came out, and we had Draisiga Kalman growing up. We had Missy and Pitu when we were kids, Kochish Pitu, who just loved us and we loved them, and they just put that in our hearts. Lily, Shult Lily, who is now Safko and Lily in Calgary. Just when they pass on their love for it, that's huge. And that was it. For me, it was really camps. I took every opportunity that I could to do any camps or workshops or all that kind of stuff that we did. Any chance we could to go down to New Jersey, we did for Tanchaz or any kind of stuff like that. But during I never went to Simpo or any of those camps. So that's like when everybody else was doing that, I was in Florida and Australia. So I kind of missed that phase.
Right. So you didn't go to, so you didn't go to symposiums or symposia, which was the camp. My parents had started a long time ago. There was the lull of a few years when nothing was going on, as far as these camps on this coast at least, and then Chipke. Chipke started.
Thank God for the timing on that. I had arrived back into North America just in time for the first Chipke. And of course we had Cifra Tabor, which was always huge. I would be remiss to not mention Cifra Tabor.
Yes. When you were in Australia, did you participate in any of the Hungarian folk dance, folk music scene there?
Not very much. I did a little bit when I first went there because I was more in the Sydney area. But when I went back sort of semi-permanently to do my degree, I was a little bit far, so a bit of a hike from Sydney. I want to say probably like a 3-4 hour at least drive, if I recall correctly. And basically all I was doing was studying during the week and working during the weekend. So unfortunately, I had the best of intentions. I was like, I'll go down once a month for something for dance in the first year. And then I just said, no, that's definitely not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you're kind of isolated as well, right there in the place you were at the university.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Speaking of folk dance, folk singing, you have a wonderful voice, and I was curious to hear from you. Who are some of your Hungarian folk singing idols, and some of the ones you might look up to?
Well, I mean, growing up, I think it was Életfa was you guys, your sister, Sebastian Marta, Muzsikás, listening to these kind of things. Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's just so many, there's too many out there to name, but like Majorosi Marianna, Nyitrai Marianna, Tinti Gabriela, like there's so many amazing singers out there, and we were so lucky to have them out at Chipke and Taborok and stuff like that, to be able to sing with them and learn from them.
Mm-hmm. You don't want to play favorites by naming anyone in particular.
I don't. I honestly have a hard time because I can't really say that there's anybody that I don't like to listen to. So
That's like can't do it. What's your favorite Hungarian folk band? And I'm like, Each and every one of them, It's
Yeah,
like,
whichever one's playing on
yes.
on what's that, the radio station that they have there?
Oh,
Folk
folk radio, yeah.
Folk Radio. Yeah, whatever's on Folk Radio, that's my current favorite.
You started a Facebook page. Um, I don't know if this was a solo project or was with others. Called Nők a népzenében, which means women in Hungarian folk music, and it's astounding to me that there has to be such a page because we men in folk music, but in folk music, unless we're talking about singers, the instrumental female folk musicians do get short shrift. Unfortunately, in the Tanchaz movement, there's not too many of them compared to the men.
Yes.
And I'm really, really, really happy you've this page exists, and I invite everybody to check it out on Facebook. But tell me about its genesis and what it means.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for me it started a little bit for myself. A few years ago, just being in the folk music scene and learning a little bit of violin on my own and that kind of stuff. I was like, there's not that many women out there. I started to sort of notice that there's not that many, but it wasn't at the forefront of my mind. But then when my kids were born and Emilke was born, and she started playing the violin, and I was like, wait a second, there's not that many examples for her, of her to sort of model. And thank God we have your sister, and we have Margit, who is just so amazing, and Gyanta for such a long time, and these kind of people. But I just started to realize that they were a little bit sort of unicorns when I was starting to look for them. And during the pandemic, I had a little bit of time, and I was looking at these things, and I really wanted to. In particular, my daughter Emilke and Zenga. Emilke is 8 o'clock. She's 8 years old now. Zenga's 5.5, and they're both playing the violin. And we have Anita, Nasrin's daughter, who's also playing the violin. And they were, we were doing some nippy stuff together. And I was like, I would love to have a place where I could collect some, videos for them, photos for them, where I could show them women playing the violin, nippy violin.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, what, maybe I'm not the only one who's looking for this resource. And so I floated the idea a little bit out there to your sister and to Barbie and some other people out there that I was like, what do you think? Should I do it? And they're like, yeah, definitely. That sounds like a great idea. And so I did. And it's been really just a fun place to celebrate women in Népzene and to have sort of a collection where people can post, videos or photos or whatever that they find, and we could sort of congregate these resources.
Right. And men are welcome to join as well.
Absolutely should. There's so many amazing men musicians out there. I think it's we all support each other, and I like you said, the men recognize that there are fewer women musicians in the movement. So I'm sure that in particular the men that we are friends with that are in the Mozgalom, they love the idea of supporting them. Many of them have female students as well and would love to see that pushed forward.
Yeah. Well, I hopped on the page right now. I got 240 members. I think it can do much more. But that's a great start. And some of my favorite videos are of the series that I know my sister participated in Budapest, where only women are playing these concerts, Hungarian folk music concerts. And you have the legends, Virágvölgyi Márti and Salamon Beja, Kucera Barbara now.
Yeah.
Was that the Barbie?
And your daughter played with them in the concert.
She did, yeah. My daughter played too, yeah. Is Kucera Barbie the Barbie that you floated this by, or Baranyai Barbie?
Baranyai Barbie is who I was floating this by.
Well, it's powerful. Videos pop up every few days, and it's wonderful to have. So congratulations on starting that. And I actually didn't know it was inspired by just giving some role models to your daughters, to stay with it. How is that going with the young kids and the violin among all the chaos of daily life, and so particularly during the pandemic? Where are they studying? Who are they studying with? And how's it going?
Yeah, so we're very lucky that we were able to do everything virtually and all that kind of stuff. And I was in particularly very lucky because my kids particularly took for the violin. They took to it virtually very easily. There was no problem there. So thankfully, my kids are studying in the Ottawa Suzuki Strings.
Mm-hmm.
They have a wonderful teacher there teaching them the Suzuki method. And that's been going great virtually. And in fact, it saves me driving. So I've liked that. And we've been really lucky to have Horváth Jóska bácsi teaching the Népi stuff for them. So that's gone super, super well. I mean, of course, we're looking forward to in real life, in person playing, in particular, together in a group with others.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful stuff. Because we decided not to participate in the virtual group classes. Is that that wasn't the same sort of vibe, and my kids are a bit young for that.
Yeah.
But the one-on-ones have been going really, really well, and in fact, it just gave a little bit of normalcy. Okay, pandemic, world's upside down, but we're still gonna play the violin.
Yes, world upside down. Well, speaking of world upside down, I find this shift from working in the agricultural space and having that as your training, all the way to like working now and
working in IT,
and the vibrant startup space. What is that about? And I mean, maybe if you had your druthers and you've had your way, you could actually you would be able to still work in agriculture. I don't know if there's some financial challenges there, but why don't you talk about that shift, because it's quite seismic, I would say.
Yeah, it's really true. It is seismic, and it started 100% as a question of convenience, really, of being able to make money at home with small children, and yeah, that's kind of I never saw myself in this. I never would have pictured it. But it's ended up being an amazingly good fit for my skill set and my interests and that kind of stuff. So even though it shies away from sort of ideologically what I would like to be doing, what I'm interested in, but daily what I actually like to do, doing a certain job that makes me feel good and makes money, then it's worked out really, really well. So for me, it was my second child was small, still a baby, and I was looking for a way to sort of go back to work but still be able to be flexible and trying to work from home more, and that's how I kind of fell into Mixtiles. There was a customer service role, completely work from home. I could be answering emails on my laptop, dealing with customers, and the pay was decent, and that's sort of how I ended up doing that. I was like, I can take care of my kids and do my other things and still make a living. And I ended up actually that was also a startup, and they were looking for somebody. The software department was looking for somebody in quality assurance, and I ended up sort of in that role, and it grew along with me, or I grew it, and it ended up being a really, really good fit. I like. I probably would have made a good editor. I have good attention to detail,
mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff. I like dealing with the people that I'm dealing with, the teams that I'm working with. So yeah, it is. It's a big shift, and I never would have pictured it. And I'm really enjoying it.
Now, this is the Ashby, ASHBY company that you joined. Was it in May? Just now?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Just in May. Yeah. So actually what ended up happening was one of the developers on my team at Mixtiles ended up moving to Ashby.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a software engineer. And when Ashby started to expand the team and say, we're looking for QA, then he suggested me, and they reached out to me, and we sort of decided that it was a better option and sort of a step up for me, a step forward in my career. Mm-hmm. And decided to make the jump.
And your husband Mike also made a jump in terms of work, I think, during the pandemic, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I guess it was just before the pandemic, I suppose. So he had really been working his own business, and he decided to take a job working for someone else. I mean, he still does his own work on the side as well. He's still got his company, but he is officially employed by a company, which is just good for us. You know, we would like to build a house and this kind of stuff. And when you want to ask the bank for money, they would prefer that you be employed rather than self-employed. It just makes life a little bit easier. So it's a sort of a strategic move for us in that way. Nothing really more than that.
And what does he do, Mike?
He is a gas technician, so HVAC, heating and cooling. So he installs furnaces and air conditionings and does repairs and that kind of stuff.
You guys still live on the farm. You do farming. Describe to us what the farm looks like in terms of, I mean, look, I like living in a condo because I don't have to shovel snow, right? So we are on the, but you live on a farm in Eastern Ontario. Very different lifestyles. What does the farm look like, and what's it like to maintain that place?
Yeah, so right now we used to raise pigs. Interestingly, we were the first in Canada to raise the Hungarian Mangalitsa pigs. So we imported them. So that was pretty cool to be the first in Canada doing that. We were raising some cows at a time, but we just decided we need to focus our priorities on our kids for now, and sort of building our future a bit more. And you just can't do it all. And that is that's sort of where we got to. So we sold off our herd of cattle, and we sold off our pigs, and we've got a few horses and a pony, and that's it for now.
So you have to take care of these horses, right? And is that a lot of work to do that?
No, thankfully it's not. They're pretty low maintenance for the most part. Let me knock on some wood here. We do grow some hay, so every year we either cut that hay. Mike either cuts the hay, or we have somebody come and do it for us, depending on our workload or Mike's workload, how that looks. But of course, there is just the general maintenance, and we've got a lot of things that fell behind after Mike's accident we're still catching up on. So there's a lot of fixing up around here to do, but yeah, even just like you said, shoveling the snow in the driveway is a job. So.
And how many acres is it?
We have almost 70.
70.
Yeah.
That's huge. It's a beautiful place. It's a great place to have parties. And your wedding.
Yeah, we can't wait to do some more NAPI parties around here.
Yeah, post-pandemic. Your wedding was there, and I remember it well. And it was a perfect marriage. Sorry for the pun. Of the that Quebecois culture and Hungarian culture, particularly when it came to music. And Gyanta, we played, but also you had this wonderful duo of musicians. Who are those guys?
Yes, those guys are Solstice, or at least they were at the time. So now Jonathan doesn't play with Solstice any longer, but you can still see Patrick playing the guitar for Solstice. And they are just amazing and unbelievable how do you even say hangulat in English? Is not really a good word for it.
Atmosphere.
Atmosphere, I guess would be a close
vibe.
But just the vibe, the vibe that those two guys could give a party is just magic.
It was magic. Two guys, one played the guitar and the other, I think, was
played the fiddle.
Played the fiddle, and they both sang. And two people, and I was like, two people can't get this crowd up dancing. There's no way. Oh, did they ever? Did they ever? It was a wonderful time.
And I'll never forget when I begged you to come back, and you came back to play.
Yeah,
you were such a trooper.
Yeah, well, we had the kids, and so we take them back to the motel, and then I turned around and came back.
And you took pity on me. You're like, you want me to come back? So I'm like, please come back. You're like, okay.
You are what I would call an early adopter of technology, which is kind of ironic because You're an agriculturalist at heart, but I'll say like of technology of certain apps what did you had the first iPod or something back in Australia still?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it's funny. It's interesting that you would describe me that way because it's not necessarily the way I would consider myself. Like, but I suppose when you put me on the scale or on the spectrum, I would definitely be an earlier adopter than most people. I think I convinced a lot of people to get the iPhone back in the day. But it's true. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I've had to think about it a little bit, but I love to learn. I love to learn about new things. I think new technology is exciting and interesting, and the way that it could, affect our lives or improve our lives or bring to our lives, I find it so interesting. So like when the iPhone came out, I was so excited, but it didn't have video capacity yet. And I was like, oh, I'm going to wait. It's going to come out. It's going to have video. And then my phone will be able to do everything I want it to do. And I waited, sure enough, until they released the one with the video. And then I got it. So I'm somebody who loves to do research. I love to learn about things. I love to do comparative analyses of like the iPhone versus the Android, these kind of things. That's right up my alley. I love to do it. So, and then I make a decision as to, I think this is the best option and I go for it. So I don't know, this is fun for me.
What technology are you looking at currently today that might be something that we should all consider adopting, that's something that's interesting, or like maybe a few years ago it was Uber, and someone said, well, Uber, I'm like, what's Uber? Well, you sit in a stranger's car and they drive you to your destination. It's like, no way, that'll never work. And Airbnb, what? Never. And here we are, so I am the wrong guy to ask, so I'm going to ask you what
interesting.
Yeah, what's something you're looking at right now?
I don't know if I'm looking necessarily like at any apps or anything, but right now I'm interested in the new Apple Watches that are set to come out in September. I'm not sure whether the new watches, as you know, they're like super secretive about what's actually going to come out, but there are some really interesting new technologies that are going to be coming out, like glucose monitoring, health stuff that I think are going to be really impactful. I think oftentimes, like for our parents that are aging, like my mom has been falling a lot, worries me. I want to get her the Apple Watch. They've got some interesting technologies now with like TELUS just sent an offer about their, whatever it is, their health care thing where, so the watch can detect if you've had a fall. But basically the capacity is like, okay, you've fallen. Are you okay? If you're not okay, within 5 seconds, we're calling 911. But this, I guess, connects you to a live, I don't know if it's a doctor or a nurse or somebody right away that says, do you need any help? What can we do? And the person, like basically like an actual human walks you through, what you should do next and calls, 911 if necessary or whatnot.
Right through the Apple Watch, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's amazing.
The Apple Watch has caught me on a fall a couple of times.
Yeah, I use mine too, particularly when I exercise, and it's been a real interesting experience with it. Too bad it's very, very, very expensive, considering. But for the magic it might do, and even life-saving capability, everyone. You hear it here first. Keep an eye on the new Apple Watch coming to you in a couple of weeks, sounds like. I also, you're one of my friends who are outspoken, I would say, use that word maybe. You're not shy about sharing your political or your social, cultural, opinions and views on social media. And I shy away from that personally myself. What drives that, and what does that feel like to put yourself out there and do you lose friends or Facebook friends or followers or whatever it might be in doing that?
That's a really interesting question, Öcsi, and it's a very thought-provoking question because I've never really thought of myself necessarily that way either. So I just see other people posting what they think, so I post what I think too. But I definitely think about what I'm going to post for sure. There are certain things, some things that I'm more reluctant to post, and then oftentimes that'll bring up questions for me as in, ooh, why am I scared of posting that? And that question of, who am I going to upset? Who am I going to whatever? That affects me in the way that, if you're somebody that I really respect your opinion and I really care about you, then I want to make sure that I still have your respect and your love or your approval, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. So in that way, yeah, I guess it is scary, but I think I feel safe with my friends and the people that I care about in having conversations. And I think that we need to have conversations, especially the world that we're living in, recently, more and more the things that are happening, whether it be climate change or pandemic stuff or all kinds of things that are happening in the world today. We need to have difficult conversations. We need to come up with difficult solutions together. Mm-hmm. We need to have governments that are responsible and that are going to be making decisions based on the things that are important to the citizens. And yeah, I think, I like to have these conversations because I think it's important to have different perspectives. I've lived with such a range of friends from different conditions. Like, if you're talking about a farmer in Australia, or you're talking from, somebody from a big city in New York or whatever, it's a completely different perspective. And we need to be able to find what we have in common. And we need to be able to maybe open each other's horizons a bit. So many of my city friends have no idea what it is that farmers and stuff go through. And it's like, you need to understand a little bit more about where your food's coming from before you're going to be making some of these decisions. So in that way, I suppose I do it just to open conversations that I think we need to be having.
What do you do when a very nice conversation, through people commenting and etc. Occurs, and then comes that guy or that gal who might be a friend of yours, but has very caustic potential thoughts, very and comes with a negative zinger and just ruins the whole parade. And I know I'm sure that's happened. It's happened to me, and in fact, that's one of the reasons why I don't engage there, because I want to avoid that situation because it just makes things uncomfortable for everybody. What are you? How do those things go in your mind? What's the result usually?
Yeah, well, so I agree, and I think that these topics have become even more and more polarizing, and I took the stance probably about a year ago that, in particular on social media and in particular on Facebook, I was like, my Facebook is for me, and I'm going to use it for myself and for the conversations that I want to be having. And if you're not going to be engaging in that way, I blocked a lot of people and I removed a lot of people that I was like, unfortunately, I think your views and your thinking are too toxic to my mental health to be able to sort of see on a daily basis. I want to go for my social media to be a positive place where I'm seeing, definitely, yes, conversations, things that are happening in the world. I don't want to block out all the negativity that's out there because I think I need to be aware. I can always not look at Facebook, I guess, for a while, but I want to be able to see, people's kids and people's, fun times and the things that they're doing and connect with people, especially during the pandemic. So yeah, I guess that's kind of the way I dealt with that situation.
Well, if you're out there listening and you haven't seen a post from Sylvie in the last year.
Thanks for outing me, Öcsi.
You know what you did, and don't do it again.
Good. Exactly. You know what you did.
Come beg for forgiveness. So we're gonna wrap up soon, but I have a couple more questions. And I know you are a wannabe violinist at heart.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it.
Unfortunately, you got a later start on that in life, later than your kids did. So that's been a challenge, I know. I've seen very few people who start violin, later in life. And how old were you when you started?
Probably 20-ish.
Yeah, I've seen very few people, pull that off successfully. I would say Kocsis Bandi is actually one of them, and Garda Levi, is contra playing. Luckily, so there are some exceptions, but you've really taken to this instrument, the ütőgardon, the percussive cello, which emanates from the Carpathian Mountains in Transylvania. And how did that start? And what do you love about that instrument? Aside from, it's more of a percussion instrument, and so there's no like complicated technical fingerings going on, but it is an instrument nonetheless that you've had to learn. Tell me about how that love affair started, and what you like about the instrument.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things to love about it. It's such a unique instrument. Nobody's heard it. It has just such a wonderful sound that sort of gets right into you. It brings you straight into the mountains.
Yes.
Of Transylvania there, when you hear it. Just that feeling of being able to actually play an instrument and contribute to the sound that the musicians are making. I loved it. I was like, this is something that we're starting Gyanta. We're going to need somebody to play it. I was like, definitely, I'll do that. And so I was just very, very fortunate that at that very moment, we were at a Tanchaz, and I turned around. Jesse and I were like, yeah, you definitely got to get a gardon. And I turned around, the Dobby Gubby was there. I was like, hey, do you know where I can get a gardon? He's like, yeah, you can buy mine. So, sometimes things just work out. And the Ütőgardon basically fell into my lap from that moment. It's a really, really fun instrument to play.
Yeah, it puts you a bit of a trance,
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, yes. It's like the drumming groups that get together and
totally.
And, when you're an outside looking in, you're like, well, these guys are total potheads, just like sitting there and, what's going on here? But then when you're in it, you get it,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The herd immunity tour is also a celebration of community, and Gabor Dobi will be with us for the performances, dancing and playing his shepherd's flute, and Sergio Popa, the great accordionist, and József Horváth, who you mentioned, teaches your kids. He will be there. They will both be there in Ottawa. And Jessica Gall, who is a wonderful violinist herself, based out of Montreal. I know you guys do a fair bit of performing with her as well. She'll be joining us at the Montreal performance. So that's going to be very, very exciting. And that's why it occurred to me to mention that, because you mentioned Gabor Dobi. Last question. What's one thing that you would love to do that you haven't done yet?
One thing that I would love to do that I haven't done yet. I have never gone scuba diving, and I would love to go scuba diving.
Scuba diving.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's been on the bucket list for way too long.
Nice. What this brings you back to the seamanship, I guess, in a way. But why do you want to go scuba diving?
I guess it's just that being able to see things that you can't see every day. Going under the ocean. I used to dream of being a marine biologist when I was a kid, and I was fascinated by the creatures under the sea. Mm-hmm. So to be able to go and see them up close, I love snorkeling, and I've done so much of that, but to really get a little bit deeper. But I wonder also if I've now, gotten a little bit too old, and now I'm maybe more scared than I would have been in my 20s. Yeah,
a little claustrophobic. Well, I hope that works.
Yeah.
I hope that works out for you. Well, Sylvie, it's been wonderful to catch up and to learn a lot more about you. And I think people listening hopefully have a newfound appreciation for you and your vibrancy and your approach to life and your many, many layers, other than the smiling, laughing, happy woman you'll see at Tanchaz carrying kids around for now.
Oh, that's so sweet. It's really been a pleasure. It's always so wonderful when we can get together and talk.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much, Sylvie. And on behalf of Sylvie Paquette-Fritsch and Tanchaz Talk. Myself, Kalman Magyar. I hope everybody enjoyed today's program, and please make sure you subscribe to all future episodes on YouTube or on the podcast platforms and the like. And until next time, see y'all.